Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
Okay. Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. I'm your host, Jens Johansson. Glad to see you here to learn more about your buildings. Today, we're helping you bring your HOA back to school. Summer break is over. It's time to sharpen our pencils and get our buildings ready for the next semester. So just like in school, everyone has, a little different role between board members and managers and consultants and everybody involved with HOAs. But we're all working towards the same goal, a well-run, safe, and happy community that goes up in value. So if you're joining us live, you get to ask questions in the Q&A. We encourage that, even if it isn't on this topic, because your questions help everyone learn more. And if you think of something later, don't worry, you can reach out or leave questions in any of the platforms, show notes, and we'll get them and use them next time. You can use hello@j2consultants.com, and we will answer those questions for you throughout the month. We pull some of those good questions in to start some of this Q&A at each show. So our producer, Carolyn, will be monitoring the chat, and I'll go through the Q&A panel at the end of the show. We'll be also doing a raffle giveaway at the end, so stick around for that to win some Cool J2 stuff. We just got these really cool, let me see if I can get it up here, leather bound little notepads, J2 VIPs. So if you ask a good question, we'll get those in there as well, get those out to you. So remember, this show is for educational content only. We're not giving legal, financial, or engineering advice. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons and ask questions. All those help the algorithm and help our ratings and help fuel our desire to continue creating these and creating more content for you. So let's go back to school. So we're going to go today's agenda. We're going to talk, every school has to start out with a brief safety drill. So we're going to go through some fall maintenance refresher, and it's we're going to cover that real quickly, but we're going to spend some time in math class. This is budget season. We're going to talk to you about budgeting basics and how to look at your budget. We're going to go to science class. We're going to talk about winterization planning. We're going to go to scheduling class. That is project planning and timelines. And we're going to talk about group projects, boards and managers working together and rolling everything up so that everybody understands what's happening there. And we'll have some final exam review, some conclusions and key takeaways. And of course, every school and every teacher has to have some office hours. So we'll have that Q&A session at the end there. See what we did. We're so proud of ourselves. We had this chalkboard and chalk and nice, not quite cursive, but almost teacher writing there. So, and then put your questions, put your questions in the Q&A panel. The chat is for housekeeping and links. So you can take a look at that and then stick around for the giveaways. All right. The main purpose of this class is we are reducing stress for both boards and managers. We understand you might feel overwhelmed and stressed about thinking about everything you got to do, and it's already a busy season. So, can I just focus on the fall? Well, let's make sure our community is working here as well. So don't worry, we got you covered. This is what we're guiding you through today. We're going to talk about planning ahead for the wetter months. We're going to talk about some project planning for costly surprises. We want to avoid those. And we're going to identify some things that you really want to focus on to be ready for next year. And one of the things that helps, we're going to kind of go up in the clouds a little bit as opposed to coming down in the dirt for the tactics. So this cloud level is how we work together. And so board members, think of them like the principal or the vice principals and all the office staff of a particular school. They are leading the community. They are providing the vision, and I'll get into that in a second. Community managers are the school administrators for the district, and they've got lots of schools they're running. But they run the day-to-day operations, make sure everything's going well. They provide the execution. They enforce the policies, they coordinate the vendors, they make sure the board's decisions are carried out smoothly. And so that's how they roll. Consultants, think of us like the specialist teachers or the guidance counselors, or maybe the focused teachers that you call in for a special class. So we bring deep technical knowledge. We help you figure out the problems. We recommend the right treatment plans for buildings, and we help both the board and manager, make informed, confident decisions. So the consultants are the guides. The board members are really doing the vision there. And what do I mean by vision? So this is every community has its own distinct, it's up to you, your own distinct vision. Is this a vacation resort second home community? Is this a family place with lots of kids? Is this primarily a rental community? Is this a senior community? So that gets into, some senior communities like a swimming pool because swimming pools are fun, but senior communities the swimming pool may be full of grandkids, and that's noisy and splashy, and that may be fun, but people trying to use the pool, why are all these kids in here? They don't live here. So these are the things we're talking about when we talk about vision. And do we want to talk about repairs if it's a vacation community? Well, then maybe we should talk about repairs in the vacation off season so that we're ready for our timeshare and our vacation and our stuff like that. And so all these things go into that. Now, your CCNRs or rules as to what the board, does, those are written down, and the board is elected to take care of the decisions. And so this isn't, a lot of community residents think it's a democracy, and well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But again, that's back to your vision. That's also back to your CCNRs. So who is making the decisions? The board was elected to make these decisions. If you want to help make more decisions, I'm sure the board would welcome you getting involved and getting on that. The managers run the day to day, but also carry out the board decisions. And so it's that vision versus execution. And again, the experts or consultants or any other kind of vendor brings in that occasional advice or that occasional piece of work or that key piece of work, but it's a good piece of work. So this is how everybody in the back to school program works. Okay, let's get into the safety drill. And we're just going to have 2 slides on this. And it's because we've covered it so much before. It's back to school is fall, and in the spring we do something very similar: fall cleaning, spring cleaning. And so really what the board members or consultant were focused on the exterior inspection homework. And so are your roofs ready, gutters clean, siding's ready, and that's, paint and sealants and things like that. And then site drainage. If we get a big gully washer, is our site going to drain okay? Or is it going to be a big muddy mess? And so then also things like seasonal. So seasonal safety checklists. Do the lights work? Do the, exterior lighting is a big thing because it gets darker sooner and stays darker longer. Trip hazards, anything that we've noticed that has become loose or, broken over the summer that we really start relying on in the wet winter, months, handrails, things like that. And then the board members are also really working on kind of a 6 to 12 month out. What is happening in 6 to 12 months? And so it's the vision for next year. This is next year. We're planning for construction starting in March, and it's basically September. So we're about 6 months out. So we're thinking ahead. Community managers, they're taking care of the seasonal vendor visits. They're documenting maintenance work for board records. They're sending out reminders. They're also dealing with any kind of warranties or service deadlines, all the common area cleanup and things like that that has to happen. That's just all normal stuff. So the big takeaways are, think about pollen right now. Pollen's mainly in the spring, but it's also in the fall. Pollen's kind of dust when it's dry. It's green. It's that stuff we see on our cars. That gets really slippery the second you add water. So the second it starts raining, now your walkways are slick. Okay. Leaves are on the trees still right now, but they're going to drop. So all your gutters are going to be full. Your roof's going to be a mess. Furnaces and fireplaces are getting ready to be turned on. So are there any bird nests? Are there any things over the summer that these things kind of got blocked with? These things are going to start kicking on, and then fireplaces will cause a bunch of smoke back in the unit if the flue is blocked, etc. So this is kind of the safety drill. It's just a heads up. Everybody knows what it is. When the bell rings, you go outside of the playground and you wait till you're told to come back in. So this is just that reminder. The condo maintenance guide link will be in the chat. This is DIY. You can do it yourself. We put this out there before. It's good to just walk around on a Saturday. You and another board member just kind of wander around, take some pictures, take some notes in your new book here. And, if you want it done for you, call us. This is what we do. So, all right. And the other piece, just the maintenance checklist for community managers. Again, the seasonal vendor inspections. So it's roof, gutters, landscaping, but it's also kind of warming up some of your wintertime vendors. Who's going to do the snow removal? Who's going to be on call for the tree blew over in November winds? And do we have a chainsaw guy and a tarp and roof guy? Do we have somebody on our short list that has agreed to come service our building and kind of warm them up a little bit so that you're not fifth in line when this happens, you're first in line. And so again, a little bit of a seasonal maintenance report, put it in the meeting minutes so you can say we've done all this stuff. It proves that you've done it. It's important to have those kind of look, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And just documenting that. Okay, enough of the safety drill. Let's go to math class. So planning for next year's budget. Okay. So how to review last year's expenses versus current needs. So we had last year's budget that was prepared in 2024. Now it's 2025. Where did we go? And we're gonna understand, because we're making 2026's budget. So we're going to compare last year's expenses to budget and see what needs to change. We're also going to determine what is our current burn rate? Why are we really burning through things? We're only 9 months in, 8 months in to 2025. So you can divide by 12 and times 8 and get, this is how much we should have spent so far. Why are we ahead? Why are we behind? Some are up, some are down. Check for inflation. We've had some weird inflation and tariffs and, whatever we've had this year. Are there any planned inspections or repair work that we were supposed to do this year that we haven't done? So let's get that taken care of. And are we looking to next year? What does that next year thing look like? And so we'll also talk a little bit about reserve studies here. But the second thing is, do we have money to spend? So we hear both sides of the budgeting argument. Budget isn't necessarily restriction on what you get to spend. It's a pre-approval that says, I will spend this year. And so we see both sides. If I don't have it in the budget, or I've got all this extra budget, I have to burn it up, otherwise I don't get it. Now this is your budget. So if you didn't burn it up or didn't spend it, you can figure out how to reallocate it or roll it over or do something with it. But it's a budget. You also have the reserve study. And I'm not going to get too deep into reserve studies, but a reserve study is a budgeting tool for what you're supposed to work on this year. And so did we replace the roofs this year? Well, we're going to push it to next year. And so we're really going to do it next year. So now we have to move our numbers around and show our math and show where we move things. And again, we're putting together next year's plan. So, hey, we didn't get to it this year. It doesn't make sense to rush into it, to do it just because we're supposed to do it. If there's not a problem, we can push it to next year, but that changes the numbers a little bit. So we have to figure that out. Third thing, if you find yourself taking from one category and putting it somewhere else, the shell game is okay, but it's a sign that your budget isn't balanced. So work on getting it balanced. And maybe it's worth going back a year and a year before and kind of looking at these notes. And it just raises another topic of save your budget notes. Here's our budget meeting for 2025. Here's what we're high on, here's what we're low on. Save it. And so then the next board can say, oh, let's look back at their notes from 2020. Oh, I see what they're doing. Oh yeah, okay. Board members have come and gone. Let's see what they were thinking. And that's a really good way to keep it to track thought process and track what we were thinking. Fourth thing, what to do with savings. Hey, we didn't spend the $5,000 that we thought we'd spend on this particular topic or this particular subject. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. Or we had a consultant come out and said we didn't have to do it this year. We could do it next year. So we're going to move that $5,000 over there, or we're going to leave that $5,000 in the budget and use this $5,000 this year that we didn't spend over to cover this. Now, how does that help us make next year's budget better? Try not to reduce dues. We hear some boards saying we didn't spend this, we can reduce our dues by this much money next year. Every manager will be like, please don't reduce dues. Surprises always come up. But if you can point to changes that are facilitating savings, then track that. Say, we got the roof replaced this year and we didn't have to spend as much on maintenance. So we've replaced it. That comes out of our reserve study. And then in the budget maintenance thing, we don't have to set up so much maintenance that we were carrying into next year because we have a brand new roof. And so we're going to take it from here and put it over there. And that's where this little mind map, if you will, of here's what we were thinking in 2025 and here's how we developed 2026's budget. So understanding reserve studies are just timed plans for spending money on maintenance and repairs. So find your reserve study, review it, ask your reserve specialist questions. We have other shows and lots of content on reserve studies, but we can talk about them here. In the next slide, we're going to put, reserve study and inspection, why you need both, guide link, then we'll put that in the chat. And then managers, how to present clear budget info to the board. Here's your expenses, here's your financials, here's the strategies for explaining cost increases or special assessments. Here are the things we've noticed in the past couple of years. We haven't been tracking that well, and we're actually negative on that. So this is why we're increasing that category. We're going to decrease this category a little bit because that element got replaced, or we talked to the consultant or reserve specialist and they said you don't need to worry about that till 2 years, 3 years down the road. But bottom line, keep the budget discussion productive and keeping records of this again help you not scratch your head again and not make next budget cycle such a big pain. So let's talk about in the reserve studies. So again, on this math and this budget checklist, again, we're looking at last 3 years of expenses. So reserve studies are, again, kind of interesting. And here's what I'll talk about budgeting. So reserve study directives. You were told to paint the fence this year. Did you? Why not? And so document that reason. And so here's some examples. So we've received a call from a client saying, I need a paint job this year. And well, okay, great. We can help you with that. Is your paint failing? No, but I have to spend $700,000 on a paint job this year because my reserve study says so. Oh, okay. Do you want to change the color? No, we want to paint exactly the same color. Okay. Is the paint peeling? No. Okay. Well, why don't we come look at it and see if you can extend that paint life? Maybe just because your reserve study said you had to do it this year. I mean, obviously you want to do it if the paint is failing or the sealants are failing or something like that. But do you want to look at it and see if you can push it out a year or two, get some more life out of the existing paint job before you replace it? Oh, I can do that? My reserve study said I had to. Okay, so that's what we're meaning. So yes, if we come out and do a little inspection and it's $2,000 to say your paint is fine for the next 4 or 5 years. Or maybe we'll say, you know what, remove and replace some sealants around these 4 buildings, around these windows, around these things. Then your paint job and sealants should last another 5 years. So instead of spending $700,000 this year, a couple grand on some consulting advice, 10 grand on some sealants, good for another 5 years. That changes all of your dues and all of your little monthly assessments and things like that for reserves. And so you go back to your reserve specialist, have them updated, tell them to push it out 4 years, and it'll adjust your numbers and actually make them more accurate. So they may, I mean, we actually get that question 5 times a year. I'm following my reserve study and I have to do this. And it's like, well, your tires are supposed to last 30,000 miles. You can get some extra mileage out of them. Good for you. You know, just because your roof's 20 years old doesn't mean it has to be replaced. That's the guideline in the reserve study. It's an estimate. The second thing about reserve funds, the reserve study funds the reserve account. The reserve funds, are they adequate? So try to get to that 50 to 70% funded. A lot of boards are calling these days saying I'm 5% funded. And it's like, okay. In that situation, we'd be saying this planned repair that you're supposed to be doing next year, you're totally underfunded for. Do you have to do it? Can we push that paint job out and then increase our dues or reserve funding so we can have money in 3 years to actually get to that? So that's where we're starting with our budget. We're looking at the reserve funds and reserve study, and we're planning and working on what we're going to be doing in the next 6 to 12 months. And so this is really helpful. And then it also, what reserve study? We haven't had one done ever. Okay, that's about 10% of our clients. We haven't had it updated in 10 years. That's about 70% of our clients. Hey, we have about 20% instead of 50%. That's about 60% of our clients. Okay, you get the idea. So discuss the savings while you're doing this annual budget and apply that to reserve funds. Notify the HOA. Talk about these future projects. Do we have funding in place, or are we on track for this? Things like that. And it's part of this fall budget study, if you will, and a good update to the HOA. Okay, another thing to think about in budgets, or I don't think it's in reserve studies, it's in budgets. Emergencies or contingencies are typically not viewed as reserve funds. Talk about that with your manager, review your CC&Rs, see if you can, if it's an emergency, can I pull it out of reserve funds? I'm not totally up to speed on that, but you can put that in to your annual budget and say, here's a little line item for snow plows, just in case it gets too snowy. I'm going to set aside $4,000 in this annual budget. I'm going to set aside a little money for inspections or emergency repairs or deductibles or things like that. That becomes part of your annual budget. If you don't spend it, you get to save it and roll it or do whatever, but at least it doesn't catch you off guard. So the budgets for the absolute perfect case scenario, plan, have a little Murphy's Law budget line item in there for, let's have a little rainy day fund here just in case. Put that in your annual budget instead of having to always pull out of your reserve account. So kind of in summary, now that we've studied this year's reserve study or this current reserve study, we can make a better next year budget. This is all part of this. They kind of go hand in hand. So there's going to be some guide links in the chat, condo funding 101 and HOA loans. This is when we don't have enough reserve study. That's why we do those things. We need to get loans because we don't have the reserves. So. All right. Now, budget checklists. Here we go. So again, for managers, clear and easy to read budget drafts. Explain reasons for cost increases or assessments or differences. We're getting multiple vendor quotes for big expense line items. A lot of the stuff's happening. And we're sharing the reserve study summary with board members of here's what we're supposed to be working on this year and next year. We need to, is this a budget line item? Is this a reserve line item? So back to school, September. A lot of boards don't fully understand the length of time it takes to get an approved budget. The managers start with a draft, send it to you. You have a meeting each month, you look at it, you get approval or revisions. Another month goes by to get board approval. Another month goes by to get HOA meeting approval. This process takes time. Right now, you should be at the end of it, but if you haven't started yet, still have a couple of months here. And so you can expedite that. But in our annual calendars and things like that we put out, we suggest you start in June or July. So you have some time to kind of do these drafts, back and forth with revisions, finally board approval, then finally HOA meeting approval, and that takes votes. So that's a formal meeting. So you're setting next year's budget. You should be 85% done right now. All right, now we're going to go to science class. So we're going to talk about science being the weather. We've done our safety checklist, picking up the leaves, but now we're preparing for weather. So we've got freezing issues. We've got exterior hose bibs, got sprinkler pipes. We've got last year's water leaks in that budget and expense line item. Has that solution been fixed? We had the sprinkler pipe burst. Why did it burst? The insulation wasn't fully covering it. Somebody else was up in the attic and they disturbed the insulation, exposed that pipe, and that's the section of pipe that froze. Has that been fixed? Has that been re-insulated, tented, whatever? And so making sure it doesn't just happen again. Exterior hose bibs, those are the little styrofoam cones that you can go to Ace Hardware and put on top of. Everybody's been washing their car all summer. The community hose bib has lost its cone. Are you getting new ones and getting them installed, or at least putting it on next month's checklist to go do it? We're getting ready for heavy wind and rain events. So October, November, this is when we get the big windstorms. So again, those gutters are clean, the drains are clean, everything's working well and ready to be tested. So the little bit of roofing, shingle blow-offs you can see on the roof right now, they aren't a problem because it's not really raining. Once it starts raining, it's going to be, we need to get those shingles fixed. And as it, again, with any of these things, if it's pouring down rain, roofing prices go up. And so if we can get that stuff done now, it'll be cheaper. Darkness. That's science, right? The days get shorter and nights get longer. Darkness, more accidents happen, more cars bump into things. They can't see it well. The lights don't work, or the motion lights aren't working, or the security cameras aren't, batteries aren't charged, whatever. So more accidents and more vandalism. And so it's a little bit darker. So we have more theft claims, more, just vandalism. Snow. It's not snowing right now. It's 85 degrees, but shovel and ice melt are the two things that are sold out after the first snow. So make sure you have yours. Put it in the storage closet. They're on sale right now. Labor Day sales. Just kind of make sure you have a few of these little things around. We do get winters with early snow, so it's kind of start thinking about that. A little bit of ice melt, and you're paying half right now, as opposed to the first storm. Pumps, motors, batteries. So this is these kind of weird things that you need. And I'll tell you a couple stories. Do you have a backup available? And so we worked with this one community that it was a master plan community. The site kind of went down into kind of this bowl, and they built this golf course in the bowl, beautiful, surrounded it with houses and condos. And part of the golf course's responsibility was to take the drainage water from the area and put it into a retention pond, beautiful water feature with a little fountain that squirted up water. But underneath, it had a pump to pump out excess water when they got a gully washer and that natural bowl filled up. And that pump would take care of any emergency, site water and surface runoff. Well, their pump failed, and it was about a $700 pump, but they couldn't get a replacement for 3 months. It was a special pump from Belgium. It was, like I said, it was $700, but it's not on the shelf. And so that flooding caused flooding into the other buildings and caused a whole bunch of damage. And so, do you have a backup pump? You have a backup pump on the shelf. Think about your community and what things would be a disaster if you didn't have a backup. New motor for the gate on the garage door. We've had lots of communities that, hey, the garage door broke. Now the cars are locked inside. People can get in and out, but it takes us 3 to 5 days to get a vendor out there to then realize they need a new motor. And so these are things to start thinking about. And maybe the gate isn't as that bad, but the water issue is a big one. And then we have lots of buildings, especially those with minimal reserves, they're already running on the backup system. And so we've got a main boiler and we've got a backup boiler for all the hot water, all the radiant heat, all this, all that. And the main boiler broke down. We are running on the backup. Well, what happens if the backup goes bad? That's the point of that. We have commercial buildings that have 2 elevators. One of them's down. So they're running on one elevator. What happens when the backup elevator goes down? And so these are specific for you guys, but get thinking about your community. Some communities don't have any of this, you don't have to worry about it. If you live in this type of stuff, what happens when the backup fails? Is that pump easily gettable, obtainable? Are those batteries available? Things like that. Generators. If you fortunate enough to have a backup generator, maybe you're a bigger building, you have a backup generator to do all this stuff. Has it been tested? They have a system of tests and servicing and things like that. Just because you've never or you haven't had to use it in the last 5 years doesn't mean you won't have to use it. Has anybody gone through the test procedure and had it serviced? So these are these kind of bigger winterization sort of science things when storms and darkness and all that stuff happens. So we're going to put a fall maintenance guide link into the chat. See that, and kind of the stories are fun to talk about and think about. And let's see. Yeah, I think I covered everything. Quick response plan is good for storm damage. This is that coordinating with insurance contacts or vendors. So again, do we have that? Excuse me. Do we have that roofer or chainsaw guy on call that can take that tree off, that can deal with these things? Then HOAs can work on some resident communication reminders, things like that, and I'll cover that next. So again, this winterization checklist, this is more for the boards and managers, but shutting down the irrigation system, bleeding it, taking the water out, securing outdoor furniture and storage on balconies. So here comes the wind, how many chairs and things blow off and hit a car, and then people are arguing about my car, your chair. Well, it was a storm, and so send out those notices. We want these things pulled off you've put things out on the railing, you've put some planters out on the railing, let's pull those things back, let's secure things, especially if you're a coastal community or even a timeshare thing of make sure as each resident or guest leaves, we put a little cable around the chairs and keep them from blowing around the site. Remind the residents of a little bit of winter prep guidelines. Maybe have some extra batteries and flashlights around. Just again, it's preparing for that unexpected stuff. Now we're going to get into scheduling classes. So the timelines. This is timelines and design work, and why planning a year ahead is critical. So project planning starts with a blank monthly calendar, or something that I've found that personally just works really well. It's a blank monthly calendar. Maybe it's 6-month calendar. Maybe it's 12 months of just blank calendar. And you start kind of just penciling things in real simply. And what we're talking about today is, hey, here's some fall cleanup we got to do. It's going to be cleaning the gutters. It's going to be doing these things. My advice is to pick a couple of weeks to get all this work done. So it's going to be right after the leaves fall, and you're going to kind of schedule that. You're going to pick a couple of weeks and designate them as maintenance, and you're going to get the vendors scheduled for those 2 weeks. We're going to do roofs, gutters, pressure washing. Maybe we're going to do some bark spreading. We're going to do some window cleaning. Obviously, work your way out with cleaning activities, not the other way around. Don't pressure wash, then clean gutters. Kind of think through that. But then you can publicize the schedule and just have a busy couple weeks. You'll just have a busy couple of weeks with vendors, and maybe a board rep being that point of contact. Uh, think about telling the members, hey, if you're going to list your unit for sale, do it after our cleaning is done and the place is going to sparkle. The landscape's going to be all picked up. The leaves are going to be all picked up. You can do your, sale flyers. You can sell your unit when this place is sparkling. So people appreciate that. They appreciate the heads up of the last 2 weeks of September are going to be annoying. There's going to be vendors every day. We're starting with the roof guy and the gutter guy and the sidewalk pressure washer and the whatever. They're going to come these days. And then they're in and out and done. And so that's kind of the seasonal work to prepare for. Then we can go to the reserve study and say, do we have to do any more repairs this year? Now we can start working on next year. And along that repair guideline, obviously, don't clean the gutters if you're going to replace it. Don't clean your roof if you're just going to replace it. So that's where you can play with those budgets and go, well, I'm supposed to replace my roof, so I'm not going to use my clean the roof budget line item. I'm going to pocket that. I'm going to save that because I'm going to get a new roof. We're just going to have a dirty roof for the next 6 months, whatever, because we're getting a new one in the spring. And so I'm going to pull back that maintenance cost. I'm not going to clean the gutter that I'm going to replace, right? So then start talking about the bigger, bigger projects. So I'm going to replace the roof here. I'm going to clean the roof here. I'm going to do, I start laying out this calendar. And then that helps us get on with vendor selection and vendor approval, and helps us say, we want you these dates. We're not just getting some weird bid just for the heck of it. We want this work done in November. Is our pricing better if we do this work in the second half of November or the first half of December? Landscaping guy may say, I'm doing a bunch of Christmas lights install in December. I have nothing in November because I've stopped mowing. I'd love to do your work in November. I'll give you a deal on it. So you can start kind of using that for budgeting tips as well as, understanding how this project is going to flow. And then you can kind of put these updates out. Here's when we're cleaning. Here's when we're doing this work. Roof replacements are happening then. Deck recoatings are happening here. To be determined or to be finalized, but we're planning on deck recoating in the first part of March. So you'll have a nice, clean, new deck surface come barbecue season. Residents like that. A, it gets them informed. B, it makes sense. They can plan around it. I'm going to go on vacation when you're doing this work because I don't even want to be here. So I'm going to go on vacation because you said you'd do it then. So that's part of the community working well together. So timelines, why planning a year ahead is critical. And then how to use the off season for bids and design work. And so if you're planning a big repair to start in March, you got to back up. we need a couple of months to do the design. We need a month or two to get bids and permits and things like that. And so we can really work that stuff backwards, and we can be doing all that design and bid work when it's pouring down rain, dark early. Nobody wants to be outside anyway, but we can get all that pre-work done so that you're ready to go. And we can actually be pricing in January when contractors are usually a little tighter and it's not fat and happy July and the prices are more. I'm looking for work and I'm trying to get my schedule lined out for next year. And so here's a good job. It's well designed, it's well laid out. I'd love to do that job. Here's my best price. And just let them know that you're okay. We're going to start in April. You're going to keep your price. I know bids have a little disclaimer. It's good for 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is. I want you to hold your number till June. And so it helps everybody doing that. So if you're planning something for 2026, now is the time to start getting ready and to be good to go in March for construction kickoff. We're going to have another little link in the chat there. Design, bidding, permitting, every step explained. And let's see, tips for pre-qualification of vendors. This is, hey, my brother-in-law is a contractor. Okay, great. So the first pre-qual is just what other projects in the area of similar size and scope have you done that we can drive by, we can see, we can call for references, etc. And so, we've got 17 buildings that need all new siding, and this is going to be a big workforce. And so that's a different contractor than a bathroom or kitchen remodeler. And so this is this vendor prequal of there's commercial exterior paint contractors that only do apartments and condos, and they are really good at it. Same with siders, same with roofers, same with, they have the right insurance, they have the right experience, they know what it takes to get this done effectively. And so, again, that vendor prequals just start with references of similar size and scope. And then managing expectations when delays happen. That's normal. Here's, again, your budget, your reserve study, they're guesstimates, they're bestimates, they're estimates with the best guess in mind. And things change. And, here's what we thought we would do. We thought we'd be, cleaning in March, but actually it's going to be April. So sorry about that. I know you went on vacation, but we're doing the best we can. Here's how we got off track a little bit. It is what it is, but we're trying to get this done. We're sharing this with you ahead of time, and we're working through this together. So, all right, more project planning. Again, kind of the bigger takeaways. Plan 12 months in advance. There's that big calendar. We know we need fall cleaning. We're going to need spring cleaning. Guess what? Shh, don't tell anybody. In March, we're going to be cleaning the gutters again because there's going to be junk and debris and winter damage and, whatever. We're also going to have some spring cleaning. Guess what? We're probably going to be pressure washing off the winter and cleaning it up. We're probably going to be doing more landscaping. We're probably going to be doing painting and things like that. So you can be kind of just blocking those things on this schedule, and it's easy to do. Choose project timing to avoid peak bad weather months. Communicate project scope and dates to residents early. Again, approve that design work before vendor bidding starts. And so we'll get some calls of, hey, we need someone to act as the, consultant on this project. The contractor started, we've already signed the contract. And we go, okay, great, we'd love to help. Do you have a set of plans? No, the contractor just said he'd take care of it. Oh, okay. Well, how do you want us inspecting that contractor? Because we need something to inspect too. Are they doing the job correctly as they promised they would? Oh, do we have to pause a little bit, or can we agree on it's just manufacturer's installation? Can we, instructions? Can we get together with the contractor and say, what are you doing? We're just going to watch and provide some additional oversight and make sure you're doing it correctly per industry standard. So hopefully steps 1 of a project documents are ready to go. Step 2, the permit's there. Step 3, the contractor is working. Hard to get a permit after the contractor starts working. So just follow the steps. All right. More planning here. Yeah, again, we can build a seasonal project calendar. And so we have that in those handouts you see. We just know we're going to do this stuff. Getting the bids, we've already talked about that. The pencils are sharper, asking them to hold the price and schedule if you sign or sign a letter of intent. This is between now and February. Get that stuff done first, pre-qualify those vendors, set realistic timelines and manage expectations. Again, you're budgeting. Those budgets will turn into a project schedule. The project schedule will turn into hard and fast dates. So this is that pre-planning section. Okay, group projects, working together. I'm sure everybody's been on a group project and felt like they were the only one doing anything. And we're trying to avoid that. So we're working together. We're getting a list. We're asking good questions. We're listening to expertise. We're getting to the bottom of things, and we're working with all the different parties. We're keeping all communication in writing for clarity. We're even leaving little notes, even leaving that little breadcrumb trail of here's what we were thinking when we put together this budget, when we put together this project. Here's the questions and the challenges we were faced with, so that in 6 months you can go back to that and say, that's right, we were struggling with that and we didn't fix that. We need to fix that right now. Or we never thought of that. Here's our entire plan. It's all outlined. I mean, we tried, and again, being transparent about that, and just that old adage of proper planning prevents poor performance. So I think one of the last kind of group projects, it takes a little bit of effort to put this together, is that emergency list. Prepare that emergency list. How do I get a hold of my manager? How do we as the board get information back and forth to the residents? So how do I get a hold of my community and neighbors? How do they get a hold of the board and manager? Are these numbers clearly posted out there? Are they? It's not, you got my business card a year ago and I've lost it. So these are the reminders. These are the meeting minutes. These are the flyer. Maybe it's a flyer in the elevator. Just occasionally, here's the manager's numbers. People take a picture of it and they have a photo somewhere. Do we have a text blast list? In the old days, we called this a phone tree, where somebody would call everybody or call 10 people, and somebody else would call another 10 people. Today's day and age with the property management software, we can send out text. Everybody listens to their text first. They'll read their emails at night. If you send them an email saying the parking lot's snowed in, the snow removal guy's coming at 10, or the backup boiler is down and don't worry, we've already called the plumber. We all get those from now the internet companies and the power companies. We know there's a power outage in your area. We're working on it right now. Don't bother calling us. We're already aware of it. Or, I am T-Mobile and we're temporarily down. We'll let you, it'll be back up shortly. So it's that communication flow. How is that happening? And, written communication is, again, a schedule, a budget, and plans and details and clarity on how this project's going to happen. Anything else on group stuff? Just last minute decision making. Try to avoid that because it usually costs more. So just planning, thinking about it, talking about it, working through it is the best way to do that. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can type in learn.j2consultants.com/consultant on call, or you can take your phone out and scan it if you don't like to type. So scan that QR code. That'll take you to a link to a quick consult call. So if you have any kind of specific question or need an inspection, or if you don't even know what you need, use this link. We're going to see if we're the right fit or see if you even need us. Maybe it's just, you just need to call a roofer. You need to call, a painter. But here's what we would suggest. It's a free 15-minute call. Use it. It's very helpful.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.